Hello my entertainment monkeys, welcome back. Here we talk all things books and movies.
This is a synopsis of the novel Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Henry Dashwood, his second wife, and their 3 daughters lived for many years with Henry's wealthy bachelor uncle at Norland Park, a large country estate in Sussex. That uncle decides, in later life, to will the use and income of his property first to Henry, then to Henry's first son, born of Henry's first marriage, John Dashwood, so that the property should pass intact to John's 3-year-old son, Harry. The uncle dies, but Henry lives just a year after that and is unable in such a short time to save enough money for his wife, Mrs. Dashwood, and their 3 daughters, Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret, who are left with only a small income to live on. On his deathbed, Mr. Henry Dashwood extracts a promise from his son, John, to take care of his half-sisters.
Must promise to do this.
I promise.
But before Henry is long in the grave, John's greedy wife, Fanny, persuades her husband to renege on that promise, appealing to his concerns about diminishing his own son Harry's inheritance, despite the fact that John is already independently wealthy thanks to both his inheritance from his mother and his wife's dowry. Henry Dashwood's love for his second family is also used by Fanny to arouse her husband's jealousy and to persuade him not to help his sisters financially. John and Fanny immediately move in as the new owners of Norland Park, while the Dashwood women are treated as unwelcome guests. Mrs. Dashwood starts to seek somewhere else to live. In the meantime, Fanny's brother, Edward Ferrars, visits Norland and is immediately attracted to Eleanor. Fanny disapproves of their budding romance and offends Mrs. Dashwood by implying that Eleanor must be motivated by his expectations of coming into money. Mrs. Dashwood moves her family to Barton Cottage in Devonshire, near the home of her cousin Sir John Middleton. Their new home is modest, but they are warmly received by Sir John and welcomed into local society, meeting his wife, Lady Middleton, his mother-in-law, the garrulous but well-meaning Mrs. Jennings, and his friend, Colonel Brandon. Colonel Brandon is attracted to Marianne, and Mrs. Jennings teases them about it. Marianne is not pleased, as she considers the 35-year-old Colonel Brandon an old bachelor, incapable of falling in love or inspiring love in anyone. While out for a walk, Marianne is caught in the rain, slips and sprains her ankle. The dashing John Willoughby sees the accident and assists her, picking her up and carrying her back to her home. After his rescue of her, Marianne quickly comes to admire his good looks and his similar tastes in poetry, music, art, and love. His attentions and Marianne's behavior lead Eleanor and Mrs. Dashwood to suspect that the couple are secretly engaged. Eleanor cautions Marianne against her unguarded conduct, but Marianne refuses to check her emotions. Willoughby engages in several intimate activities with Marianne, including taking her to see the home he expects to inherit one day and obtaining a lock of her hair. When an engagement, or at least the announcement of one, seems imminent, Mr. Willoughby instead informs the Dashwoods that his aunt, upon whom he is financially dependent, is sending him to London on business, indefinitely. Marianne is distraught and abandons herself to her sorrows. Edward Ferrars pays a short visit to Barton Cottage, but seems unhappy. Eleanor fears that he no longer has feelings for her, but she will not show her heartache. After Edward departs, sisters Anne and Lucy Steele, the vulgar cousins of Mrs. Jennings, come to stay at Barton Park. Lucy informs Eleanor in confidence of her secret 4-year engagement to Edward Ferrars that started when he was studying with her uncle, and she displays proof of their intimacy. Eleanor realizes Lucy's visit and revelations are a result of her jealousy and cunning calculations, and it helps Eleanor to understand Edward's recent sadness and his behavior towards herself. She acquits Edward of blame and pities him for being held to a loveless engagement to Lucy by his sense of honor. Eleanor and Marianne accompany Mrs. Jennings to London. On arriving, Marianne hastily writes several personal letters to Willoughby, all of which go unanswered. When they meet by chance at a dance, Willoughby is with another woman. He meets Marianne reluctantly and coldly, to her extreme distress. She leaves the party completely distraught. Soon after, Marianne receives a curt letter enclosing their former correspondence and love tokens, including the lock of her hair. Willoughby is revealed to be engaged to a young lady, Miss Grey, who has a large fortune. Marianne is devastated. After Eleanor reads the letter, Marianne admits to Eleanor that she and Willoughby were never engaged. She behaved as if they were because she knew she loved him and thought he loved her. As Marianne grieves, Colonel Brandon visits and reveals to Eleanor that Willoughby seduced, impregnated, and then abandoned Colonel Brandon's young ward, Miss Eliza Williams. Willoughby's aunt subsequently disinherited him, and so, in great personal debt, he chose to marry Miss Grey for her money. Eliza is the illegitimate daughter of Brandon's first love, also called Eliza, a young woman who was his father's ward and an heiress. She was forced into an unhappy marriage to Brandon's elder brother in order to shore up the family's debts, and that marriage ended in scandal and divorce, while Brandon was abroad with the army. After Colonel Brandon's father and brother died, he inherited the family estate and returned to find Eliza dying in a pauper's home. So, Brandon took charge of raising her young daughter. Brandon tells Eleanor that Marianne strongly reminds him of the elder Eliza for her sincerity and sweet impulsiveness. Brandon removed the young Eliza to the country and reveals to Eleanor all these details in hope that Marianne could get some consolation from discovering Willoughby's true character. Meanwhile, the Steele sisters have come to London as guests of Mrs. Jennings. After a brief acquaintance, they are asked to stay with John and Fanny Dashwood at their London home. Lucy sees the invitation as a personal compliment rather than what it is, a slight to Eleanor and Marianne, who, being family, should have been the first to receive such an invitation. Too talkative, Anne Steele betrays the secret of Lucy's engagement to Edward Ferrars, Fanny's brother. As a result, the sisters are turned out of the house, and Edward is ordered by his wealthy mother to break off the engagement on pain of disinheritance. Edward, still sensitive of the dishonor of a broken engagement and how it would reflect poorly on Lucy Steele, refuses to comply. He is immediately disinherited in favor of his brother Robert, which gains him respect and sympathy from Eleanor and Marianne for his conduct. Colonel Brandon shows his admiration by offering Edward a clergyman's living at Delaford Parsonage to enable him to marry Lucy after he takes orders. Mrs. Jennings takes Eleanor and Marianne to the country to visit her second daughter, Mrs. Charlotte Palmer, at her husband's estate, Cleveland. Marianne, still in misery over Willoughby's marriage, goes walking in the rain and becomes dangerously ill. She is diagnosed with putrid fever and is believed that her life is in danger. Eleanor writes to Mrs. Dashwood to explain the gravity of the situation, and Colonel Brandon volunteers to go and bring Marianne's mother to Cleveland to be with her. In the night, Willoughby arrives and reveals to Eleanor that his love for Marianne was genuine and that losing her has made him miserable. He elicits Eleanor's pity because his choice has made him unhappy, but she is disgusted by the callous way in which he talks of Miss Williams and his own wife. He also reveals that his aunt said that she would have forgiven him if he had married Miss Williams, but he had refused. Marianne recovers from her illness, and Eleanor tells her of Willoughby's visit. Marianne realizes she could never have been happy with Willoughby's immoral, erratic, and inconsiderate ways. She learns to value Eleanor's more moderate conduct with Edward and resolves to model herself after Eleanor's courage and good sense. Edward later arrives and reveals that after his disinheritance, Lucy jilted him in favor of his now wealthy younger brother, Robert. Eleanor is overjoyed. Edward and Eleanor marry, and later Marianne marries Colonel Brandon, having gradually come to love him. The two couples live as neighbors, both sisters and husbands in harmony with each other. Willoughby continues to consider Marianne his ideal, but the narrator tells the reader not to suppose that he was never happy.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, like and share so that you don't miss out on more content.